On our wedding anniversary, Marcus handed me divorce papers. The cold printed paper was even colder than his gaze. He said, "Grace, let's get a divorce." I looked at him, at the man I had loved for 8 years, who I had stood by as he went from having nothing to being worth hundreds of millions. My voice trembled slightly. "Why?" He scoffed. "Look at yourself now. A housewife at home every day, what else do you do? You're utterly beneath me, Grace." He paused, then added in a condescending tone, "Don't worry, as husband and wife, I won't shortchange you. I'll give you a spacious condo in the Southwood district and $5 million in cash. It's enough for you to be financially secure for the rest of your life." Beyond the floor-to-ceiling window behind him was the city's dazzling night view. The tech headquarters building, named after him, was his greatest pride. I once thought it was our shared pride. Until, his young and beautiful assistant, accidentally knocked over some documents, her face revealing a pitiably flustered expression. Marcus immediately turned around, his voice gentle in a way I had never heard before. "Are you okay, Chloe? Did you burn your hand?" In that moment, everything became clear to me. I slowly picked up the papers, my heart feeling as if an invisible hand was crushing it, the pain making it impossible to breathe. Marcus saw my prolonged silence and frowned impatiently. "Grace, don't be ungrateful." I took a deep breath, swallowed the metallic taste in my throat, and looked up, meeting his gaze, enunciating each word. "Fine, I'll sign." He seemed surprised by my ready compliance, momentarily stunned, then broke into a satisfied smile. I looked at his smug face and smiled too. He didn't know that the Viridian he was so proud of was merely a dowry my father had casually given me years ago, allowing him to gain some experience. "Marcus, are you really divorcing your wife?" On the other end of the phone was Marcus's childhood friend and the calm Haney's vice, Ethan. There was a hint of barely concealed schadenfreude in his voice. Marcus was sitting opposite me, casually putting the phone on speaker. "Yes, I gave her the papers, she has no objections." His tone was as casual as discussing the weather. "That's good. Honestly, you and your wife have long been living in different worlds. Look at Chloe, a top graduate, highly capable, helping you with internal and external affairs at the company. She's a true supportive partner. Unlike your wife, who knows nothing but how to spend money." Ethan's words felt like needles piercing my heart. I looked down at the cold divorce papers on the coffee table. "I know how to spend money?" Marcus and I had been married for 5 years, starting from when he had absolutely nothing. The initial capital for his startup came from money I borrowed from my family. When the company was just starting, to save money, I single-handedly handled administration, HR, and finance, working until the early hours every day, couldn't even afford instant ramen. Later, when the company was on the right track, he said, "Honey, you've worked hard. From now on, stay home and enjoy life, I'll take care of you." I believed him. I resigned from all my positions, stepped back, content to be the woman behind him. I studied flower arranging, fine art appreciation, and gourmet cooking, striving to become an elegant and proper wife befitting Mr. Marcus's status. Now, all of that had become evidence of my uselessness in his eyes. "Marcus, are you done with your call?" I looked up, my voice so calm it felt alien to me. He hung up the phone, looking at me with some surprise. "What is it?" "Nothing." I picked up the pen and turned to the last page of the agreement. "Just wanted to tell you that I'm signing this agreement." Next to wife, I slowly wrote my name, stroke by stroke, Grace. My handwriting was clear, without a hint of tremor. Seeing my decisive action, Marcus was momentarily stunned. He probably expected me to cry, make a scene, or cling to his leg like a shrew, begging him not to leave. Unfortunately, he was wrong. When a woman is utterly disappointed, her composure can surpass anyone's imagination. Marcus quickly regained his arrogant demeanor, taking the papers as if he had completed a major task. "Grace, you're smart enough to know what's good for you." I looked at him, suddenly finding it a little amusing. "Marcus, do you really think giving me a house and $5 million in cash is some grand gesture?" He frowned, looking at me as if I were an unreasonable madwoman. "Isn't it? What makes you think you're worth more? Don't forget, this company, all this wealth, I earned it all by myself." "All by yourself?" I softly repeated those 3 words, the smile at the corner of my lips deepening. "Of course." He straightened his back, his voice filled with undisguised pride. "From a poor kid with nothing to someone on the Forbes list today, I, Marcus, relied solely on myself." I stood up and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city below. "Then do you know who provided the first angel investment for your company, 50 million? Marcus's face subtly changed. "That was the starting point of his career. and also the past he was most reluctant to mention. Because that money was something he had begged me for, sacrificing all his dignity, borrowing it from my family's home. So what? He quickly composed himself and snorted coldly, I repaid that money, principal and interest, a long time ago. And that was a loan, not an investment. I turned around, meeting his gaze, a hint of pity in my eyes. Marcus, have you forgotten? What we signed back then wasn't a loan agreement, but a stock transfer agreement. His pupils constricted sharply. You. What did you say? I said, I spoke slowly and clearly, the $50 million my father gave you back then wasn't a loan. It was him using my name to purchase 85% of your company's origin. All shares. Marcus's face instantly turned ashen. That's impossible. We clearly signed a loan agreement. He stood up excitedly, staring intently at me, like a provoked beast. I unhurriedly took out a faded photocopy of a document from my bag and gently placed it on the coffee table. See for yourself. It's in black and white, with your own signature. The title of the contract is Angel and Shareholding Agreement. He lunged, grabbing the document, his eyes wide as saucers. I watched his disheveled state, feeling no satisfaction of revenge, only a desolate sadness. No, this isn't real. He mumbled, his fingers trembling from the force. Even if it is real, that was my father's investment. What does it have to do with you? We're divorcing, and we're dividing marital assets. This part is premarital investment. You won't get a single cent. He seemed to grasp at a lifeline, immediately regaining his composure. I looked at his blustering but inwardly timid demeanor and shook my head. Marcus, you're too naive. Then I dialed a number. Arthur, you can come in now. Less than a minute later, the doorbell of the villa rang. Marcus looked at the door warily. I walked over and opened it. Standing outside was a middle-aged man in a suit and tie. Behind him were two equally professional young assistants. Ms. Grace. The man in charge nodded slightly at me. Arthur, thank you for your trouble. This was my father's private legal advisory team. Arthur, the lead lawyer, was a top-tier corporate lawyer in the industry, having handled countless MA cases involving publicly listed companies. Marcus's face turned even uglier at the sight of them. Grace, are you bringing lawyers to scare me? Arthur ignored him and walked straight to the coffee table, placing a thick folder on it. Mr. Liu, hello, I am Arthur, Ms. Grace's attorney. His voice was devoid of emotion. Regarding your divorce from Ms. Shen, and the matter of Viridian equity ownership, I believe we need to have a serious discussion. He pulled the first document from the folder and pushed it towards Marcus. This is the original Angel agreement from back then, where Mr. William, Ms. Grace's father, invested 50 million yuan into your Viridian under Ms. Grace's name. According to the agreement, Ms. Grace holds 85% of the company's shares, and you personally hold 15%. Marcus stared intently at the document, fine beads of sweat breaking out on his forehead. Arthur didn't pause, pulling out a second document. This is the shareholding agreement signed simultaneously with the investment agreement. It explicitly states that the 85% of shares held by Ms. Grace were fully entrusted to you for proxy holding and management during the marriage. However, the ultimate ownership and entitlement to returns of the shares always belong to Ms. Grace personally. This agreement is notarized. Meaning, Arthur looked up, his gaze sharp as a knife. Mr. Liu, you are merely a proxy holder. Viridian, from beginning to end, has always been Ms. Grace's personal property. Marcus looked as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue, staggering back 2 steps before slumping onto the sofa. The blood drained from his face, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. The entire living room fell into a pin-drop silence. Only the rustling of Arthur turning pages was piercingly clear. Marcus sat there blankly, as if his soul had been sucked out. Everything he was proud of, his business empire, his success story, was shattered into pieces by a few thin papers in this moment. Marcus suddenly looked up and said, I don't believe it. Grace, you forged this. You and your father conspired to trick me. He frantically tried to tear up the documents but was quickly stopped by Arthur's assistants. Mr. Liu, please calm down. Arthur's voice remained calm, but it carried an undeniable authority. All documents have legal effect. If you have any doubts, ABO, the authenticity of the documents, we can go to court at any time. Marcus seemed to hear some grand joke. He pointed at me, roaring, his face contorted. Grace, you actually plotted against me. We're husband and wife. Why would you do this to me? I watched him quietly. Marcus, when you brought your mistress to force me into a divorce, saying I was useless, why didn't you think of us as husband and wife? When you and your childhood friend mocked me for knowing nothing but how to spend money, calculating how to make me leave with nothing, why didn't you think of us as husband and wife? When you comfortably enjoyed everything my family's home brought you, yet turned around and accused me of being beneath you, why didn't you think of us as husband and wife? My voice was not loud, but each word was a dagger to the heart. With each sentence, Marcus's face grew paler. He opened his mouth, but found himself powerless to refute. Marcus, I walked up to him and looked down at him. If I truly wanted to plot against you, I wouldn't have let you touch any company shares from the beginning. Yes, I knew everything. He thought he had done everything flawlessly, but he didn't know that the company's real financial director was someone my father had personally placed there. Every irregular expense he made was reported to my email at the first opportunity. I endured it, staying silent, because I still held on to a shred of our marital bond, still harboring a last glimmer of hope for him. I thought he was just temporarily confused, and that one day he would come back. Until today, when he himself tore that illusion to shreds. You knew all along? Marcus's lips trembled, his eyes filled with terror and disbelief. Arthur promptly handed him the third document. It was a thick account statement. Mr. Liu, these are all the consumption records you made over the past 3 years under the company's name for a Ms. Chloe. This includes a Porsche 911 valued at 3 million AH. High-end apartment in downtown, a living allowance of 500,000 per month, and various designer handbags, jewelry, totaling approximately 23,450,000 yuan. Arthur pushed up his glasses and added coldly, according to our criminal law, this already constitutes the crime of embezzlement. Given the significant amount, it is punishable by a minimum of 5 years in prison. Marcus completely collapsed upon hearing this. He was finally scared. He looked at me, his eyes filled with pleading. Grace, I was wrong. I really was wrong. Please forgive me this once. Let's not divorce, okay? Let's go back to how things were. He tried to grab my hand, but I recoiled in disgust. I sneered, like before? You philander outside while I lead a lonely existence at home, enduring humiliation from you and your family? Marcus, do you really think I, Grace, am so easily fooled? No, that's not it. He babbled incoherently. Chloe and I were just a fling. You're the one I've always loved. Grace, please give me another chance. How ridiculous. Even at this point, he was still trying to win me back with cheap love. He hadn't even realized where he went wrong. He was just afraid of losing everything he had. I looked at him, my eyes as cold as ice. I've given you countless chances, Marcus. You're the one who threw them away, time and again. Now, the game is over. I turned to Arthur. Arthur, I'm entrusting all subsequent matters to you. Arthur nodded. Understood, Ms. Grace. Marcus let out a wailing cry. Grace, you can't do this to me. You're trying to destroy me. I didn't spare him another glance, turning and walking towards the door. At the door, I paused, but didn't look back. Marcus, you're wrong. I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm just taking back what was rightfully mine. As for you, you yourself killed your own future. With that, I opened the door and walked out without looking back. The sun outside was bright. The next day, I moved out of the villa where I had lived for 5 years. Instead of going back to my family's home, I booked an executive suite at a 5-star hotel in downtown. I needed a quiet place to organize my thoughts and prepare for the upcoming battle. Taking back the company was only the first step. How to stabilize the company and make it thrive even more under my leadership was the real challenge. Although I had been out of company management for 5 years, I was, after all, a top student in finance. After graduation, I rotated through various departments at my father's company for 2 years, climbing from an entry-level position to project manager. I was not unfamiliar with company operations and management. These past 5 years, even as a housewife, I never stopped learning. I followed global economic trends, studied the latest business cases, and even secretly obtained several highly valuable financial certifications. I was just waiting for the right moment. Or perhaps, I was waiting for Marcus. I had naively thought my waiting would bring about his change of heart, that we could reconcile. Looking back now, it's truly laughable. A true beast cannot be tamed. His ambition had long surpassed love and family. I soaked in the bathtub, the warm water enveloping me, yet unable to thaw my icy heart. My phone vibrated nearby, the screen displaying 3 words, Chloe. I dried my hands and swiped to answer. Hello, is this Grace? The voice on the other end was sweetly feminine, with a hint of barely concealed triumph. It's me. Oh, I just wanted to ask, when are you and Marcus going to finalize the divorce? We can't wait. His mistress apparently still didn't know what had happened to the company. Right, Marcus was such a proud man, how could he immediately tell her that he had fallen from grace? I could almost imagine her expression at that moment, getting a manicure while displaying the air of a victor to me, the loser. Why aren't you saying it? Hing? She grew impatient when she didn't get a response. Grace, I advise you to be sensible, sign the papers, and get lost. A washed-up housewife like you is utterly beneath Marcus. He loves me now, and the future Mrs. Liu will only be me. Is that so? I chuckled softly. Miss Chloe, are you so sure? Of course. Her tone of boasting was almost overflowing. Marcus said he'd marry me right after divorcing you. He even plans to give me the company as a wedding gift. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. How she could even imagine that. What are you laughing at? My laughter seemed to provoke her. You disgraced ex-wife. What right do you have to laugh at me? I'm laughing at you. I stopped laughing, my voice suddenly turning cold, for being pathetically naive. You. What do you mean? She finally sensed something was wrong. Nothing. I stood up from the bathtub and wrapped myself in a bathrobe. I just wanted to remind you that your Porsche, worth $3 million, will likely be repossessed. And the apartment you live in, as well as the 500,000 yuan living allowance in your bank account every month. Good luck, future girlfriend of a convict. With that, I hung up the phone before she could react. I could foresee a messy spectacle about to unfold. And I only needed to sit in the audience and enjoy it. The next morning, I went to the office. This was my first time stepping into the Viridian headquarters in 5 years. The security guard at the entrance didn't recognize me and blocked my way. Ma'am, who are you looking for? Do you have an appointment? Before I could speak, a familiar voice came from behind me. Well, isn't this Grace? What, did Marcus kick you out, and now you have nowhere to go, so you came to the company to make a scene? I turned and saw Ethan's repulsive face. Beside him were several department heads of the company, all looking at me with an expectant, let's watch the show look. Vice Ethan. I spoke calmly. No, please don't call me that, I don't deserve it. He waved his hand exaggeratedly, his tone sarcastic and mocking. You're a disgraced ex-wife now. Us little people can't afford to offend you. The few people behind him burst into laughter. I looked at them as if they were clowns. Ethan, I took a step forward, looking him directly in the eyes. I recall that when the company's capital chain broke, you knelt at my doorstep, begging me to ask my father for help, didn't you? Ethan's face stiffened. To earn your wife's respect, you even pleaded tearfully, saying you'd work like a dog for us. What, only a few years have passed, and you've forgotten? The laughter around us abruptly ceased. Everyone exchanged glances, clearly unaware of this episode. Ethan's face turned beet red. What nonsense are you spouting? He growled, enraged. Nonsense? I sneered. Do you want me to retrieve the surveillance footage from back then and let everyone in the company enjoy seeing how Vice Ethan worked like a dog? You. He trembled with anger, but couldn't utter a single word in rebuttal, because everything I said was true. I ignored him, turning to the receptionist and saying, notify all management at director level and above to attend a meeting in the top floor conference room in 10 minutes. No one is to be absent. The receptionist was stunned, subconsciously looking at Ethan for instructions. Ethan snapped back to reality and roared, who do you think you are, giving orders here? Security, get this crazy woman out of here. 2 security guards immediately stepped forward, preparing to restrain me. Just then, a steady voice came from the elevator entrance. Stop. Everyone looked towards the sound, only to see Arthur and his team, briefcases in hand, walking over with long strides. Behind him was David, the company's CFO. David was a veteran employee of the company, personally placed there by my father years ago, and fiercely loyal to me. Arthur? David? Ethan was stunned. Ned when he saw them. Why are you here? David ignored him and walked straight to me, bowing respectfully. Chairman, you've arrived. The title chairman exploded like a bombshell among the crowd. Everyone was stunned. Ethan's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Mr. David, what did you call her? Chairman? Are you mistaken? David looked up, his face expressionless. I am certainly not mistaken. Starting today, Ms. Grace will officially take over as chairman and CEO of Viridian. Saying this, he took a document from an assistant behind him and held it high. This is the official board resolution, bearing the personal signatures of over 85% of the shareholders. It is effective immediately. Ethan's face instantly turned paler than paper. He looked at me in disbelief, then at the resolution, his mouth agape. 85%. How is that possible? Arthur stepped forward and patted his shoulder. a hint of sympathy in his voice. Vice Ethan, it seems you're out of the loop. Mr. Marcus has been taken in by the police for investigation, suspected of embezzlement and misappropriation of funds. And this company, from beginning to end, has always been chairman's personal property. Boom, Ethan felt all the strength drain from him, his body swayed, and he nearly slumped onto the floor. He finally understood what kind of person he had offended. Top floor, main conference room. All company executives were present. Their faces were etched with a mix of shock, speculation, and unease. They had clearly heard about the commotion downstairs, but what exactly had happened, they only vaguely understood. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice not loud, but clearly reaching every ear. I imagine you're all very curious about why I'm sitting here. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Grace, and I am the largest shareholder of this company. Starting today, I will officially assume the roles of chairman and CEO. As soon as my words fell, an uncontrollable murmur immediately rippled through the room. An older man with a receding hairline, who appeared quite senior, stood up. His name was Robert, the company's technical and Marcus's trusted confidant, whom Marcus had personally promoted. Chairman? With all due respect, we only recognize Mr. Marcus. The company was founded by Mr. Marcus alone. How can you, a housewife who's been home with the kids for years, manage the company? His tone was full of disdain and provocation. As soon as he spoke, several others immediately echoed his sentiments. I looked at their incensed faces, not at all surprised. These people were all Marcus's loyalists. They would rise and fall together. With gone, their good days were naturally over. Rather than waiting for me to clean house, they decided to preemptively put me in my place. Unfortunately, they had miscalculated. I didn't get angry, instead, I smiled. Director, is it? You said the company was founded by Marcus alone, and I don't dispute that. But you said I don't understand management or technology, and I'd like to ask you about that. I picked up a document from the table. It was the company's latest project proposal. Your department's Skyfall system, currently under development, is touted as an industry-first distributed AI engine. Sounds impressive. But to my knowledge, this so-called industry-first technical architecture was already patented 3 years ago by Stardust Company in Silicon. More than 70% of your core algorithm directly copied Stardust's open-source code. Furthermore, I've also found that you abused your position to leak the company's core data to our competitor, Windswift Tech. In return, Windswift gave you 5% phantom shares. Director, this is no longer simple technical plagiarism, it's commercial espionage. I believe that rather than worrying about resigning to me, you should be more concerned about how many years you'll spend in prison. My voice was calm, but the content hit the conference room like a thunderclap. Robert's legs went weak, and he slumped into his chair, sweating profusely. Additionally, I scanned the room, my gaze falling on the department heads who had just joined in the commotion. Those who sided with director and clamored to resign en masse earlier will be individually spoken to by HR after this meeting. Those who wish to stay are welcome. Those who don't, the company will not hold back. However, let me make one thing clear up front. Viridian doesn't tolerate idlers, much less ungrateful wretches. My voice was not loud, but it carried an undeniable authority. The entire conference room was filled with pin-drop silence. The executives who had been so arrogant just moments before now all lowered their heads, kept silent, fearing repercussions. They finally realized that the woman before them was by no means a pushover. After the meeting, I stayed in the office alone. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the bustling traffic outside. The decisive and efficient woman in the conference room earlier seemed like a phantom. Now, exhaustion and sorrow washed over me like a tide. I had, after all, overestimated myself. Sending the man I had loved for 8 years to prison with my own hands, tearing apart the home we had built together with my own hands. How could my heart not ache? My phone rang. It was my father. Grace, is everything handled? My father's steady and gentle voice came from the other end of the line. Yes. I answered, my voice choked with barely suppressed sobs. Cry, it's okay to cry. My father sighed. Dad knows you've been wronged. That one sentence instantly shattered all my pretenses. Tears, uncontrollably, streamed down my face. I squatted down, hugging my knees like a helpless child, and cried loudly. The grievances endured over the years, the loneliness tolerated, the sincere feelings given. All the emotions, in this moment, completely erupted. My father didn't rush me, just listened quietly on the phone. It wasn't until I cried myself tired, my voice hoarse, that he slowly spoke. Grace, Dad knows you chose Marcus because you loved him. That scoundrel doesn't deserve you. Leaving him is the best decision you've ever made. From today onwards, forget that unpleasant past. You are the chairman of Viridian. What you need to do is lead it to a greater height. My father's words were like a warm torrent, pouring into my cold heart. Yes, why should I deny myself for a man who wasn't worth it? I wasn't a disgraced ex-wife. I was a queen reborn from the ashes. The following days, I was like a whirlwind, cleaning out the company's parasites, reorganizing management, adjusting the company's strategic direction. Every single task required my direct involvement. David became my most capable assistant, helping me stabilize the company's foundation. I also recruited several key technical and marketing talents from my father's company, quickly filling the vacancies left by Robert and Ethan. Company employees initially held a wait-and-see attitude, mixed with skepticism, towards me, the parachute-in female boss. But after witnessing my decisive and efficient methods and my precise grasp of operations, the voices of doubt gradually disappeared. They were replaced by awe and trust. However, just when I thought everything would settle down, an unexpected person found me. Chloe. She asked to meet me at a coffee shop. After a few days, she looked much more haggard. Her designer clothes and handbags were gone, replaced by a cheap t-shirt and jeans. Even her elaborate makeup couldn't hide her fatigue and haggardness. She was clearly not doing well. After's downfall, all her ill-gotten gains were recovered. Ms. Grace. She saw me and managed a smile that looked worse than a grimace. I didn't speak, just watched her quietly. She seemed to find it difficult to speak, hesitating for a long time before taking out a bank card from her bag and pushing it towards me. There's 500,000 in here. I know it's nothing to you, but this is all my savings. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I hope to use this money to gain your understanding. She lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. Please, I beg you, drop the lawsuit against me, okay? I don't want to go to prison. I'm still young. I can't have a criminal record. I looked at her, and suddenly found it a little ridiculous. Miss Chloe, have you misunderstood something? The law is fair. If you've committed a crime, you should be punished. This isn't something I can decide by giving or withholding my understanding. She became anxious, looking up, her eyes rimmed with red. I just loved Marcus too much. He said he would divorce you and marry me, that's why I was tricked by him. I sneered. You loved his money, his status, the luxurious life he could give you, didn't you? If the Marcus sitting here today was still the one with nothing, would you still say you loved him? She was speechless, her face alternating between pale and flushed. Chloe, put away your helpless act. It won't work on me. When you interfered in my marriage and enjoyed wealth and luxury that didn't belong to you, you should have anticipated this outcome today. Adults must pay the price for their choices. I stood up, ready to leave. Grace. She suddenly called out to me, her voice shrill. Don't get cocky. Do you think you've won? You brought down Marcus, you brought me down, but what did you get? You're still a disgraced ex-wife abandoned by a man. Marcus never loved you. When he was with me, he said more than once that you were like a dead fish, boring and uninteresting. He said he felt disgusted every time he touched you. Her malicious words, like poisoned arrows, shot towards me. If it were before, I might have felt heartbroken, angry. But now, I only felt pathetic. I turned around, looking at her face contorted by jealousy, and said calmly, whether he loved me or not is no longer important. What is important is that everything he once prided himself on now bears my name, and you, and he, will both pay the price for your actions. That is enough. With that, I didn't look at her again and turned to leave, leaving her alone, utterly broken, in her place. Days passed, and under my leadership, the company gradually got back on track. The company's market value tripled in just 3 months. I, Grace, the housewife once ridiculed as useless by my ex-husband, proved myself to everyone with my capabilities. However, that day, David knocked and entered my office. Chairman, there's something I need to report to you. What is it? Marcus has been sentenced. The hand holding my coffee cup paused slightly. How many years? Convicted of embezzlement and misappropriation of public funds, he was convicted of multiple charges and sentenced to 10 years. David paused, then added, Chloe, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 3 years. 10 years. I thought for a moment. By the time Marcus gets out, he will be almost 50. The world would be completely unfamiliar to him. In my heart, there was no triumph, no sorrow, only a quiet sense of wistful calm. Understood. I set down my coffee cup and continued looking at the documents in my hand. Seeing no reaction from me, David spoke again. There's one more thing. Marcus, from prison, sent a message through someone, saying he wanted to see you. The hand flipping through the document stopped. I said calmly, tell him there's nothing left for me to say to him. All right, I understand. David nodded and turned to leave. Wait a moment. I suddenly called out to him. Chairman? I pondered for a moment, then took out a bank card from my drawer. This card has 200,000. Find a reliable person to send his mother 2,000 for her living expenses each month. David looked stunned. Chairman, she's old, after all, and life isn't easy for her, eh? Loan. I sighed. Marcus's crimes are his own, his mother is innocent. Although I resented Marcus and disliked his snobbish mother, that's a separate issue. She's an elderly woman, and I couldn't truly ignore her. It was also a way to do a good deed for myself. A year later, the company headquarters relocated. We moved into a taller, more imposing office tower in the heart of the CBD. The company's name, Shiyuan, was officially changed to Qiming. The name signifies opening light and inspiring the future. This also represented my complete farewell to the past and the beginning of my own brand new chapter. On the day of the relocation celebration, it was a full house of distinguished guests. Business magnates, political figures, and partners all came to offer their congratulations. Dressed in a sharp white suit and tie, I stood on stage, delivering my speech. Under the spotlight, I was composed, confident, and radiant. Below the stage, I saw my parents. They sat in the front row, watching me, their eyes filled with pride and contentment. After the celebration, once the guests had departed, I returned alone to my empty office. My assistant, Lynn, knocked and entered. Chairman, a gentleman is downstairs asking for you. He said his last name is Chin. Chin? I paused, searching my mind for that surname. He said he's your college classmate. College classmate? I frowned but decided to go down and see. In the lobby, a tall, well-built man in a casual suit and tie stood with his back to me, admiring the company history wall on the wall. Hearing footsteps, he turned around. The moment our eyes met, I froze. It was a handsome and familiar face, with defined features and deep eyes. Time seemed to favor him, leaving no marks on his face but instead adding to his mature charm. Owen? Owen? I spoke with some uncertainty. He smiled, his grin as warm as a spring breeze. Grace, long time no see. Owen, my college class president, was also widely recognized as the campus heartthrob back then. He was not only handsome but also intelligent, and from a privileged background. He was prince in the hearts of countless girls. Of course, that included the me of the past. But back then, I was introverted and insecure, only daring to quietly keep that affection to myself. Later, Marcus appeared. His passion and persistence were like a fire, quickly melting my heart. After that, Owen and I lost touch. I heard he went abroad for further studies after graduation. I never imagined that after so many years, we would reunite here, in this way. How did you end up here? I was a little surprised. I just returned to the country and took over the family business. He pointed to a building not far away. My company is right across from yours. What a coincidence. Yes, quite a coincidence. He looked at me, his eyes holding a subtle emotion I couldn't quite decipher. I read your interview and was very happy for you. You're even more remarkable than I imagined. His compliment was genuine and unpretentious, making me feel a little embarrassed. I actually always wanted to find you. He hesitated before speaking. I just didn't know what identity to use. On the day of college graduation, I had actually prepared flowers. My heart skipped a beat. But beat me to it. He chuckled self-deprecatingly. I thought then that perhaps he was braver than I, and could give you more happiness. As it turned out, I was wrong. I never knew there was such a story behind it. We fell into a silence. The past is the past. Finally, I was the one to break the silence, smiling at him. I'm doing very well now. I can see that. He smiled back. Then, do I have the honor of inviting my new neighbor, Chairman, to dinner? He extended his hand to me, making a gentlemanly inviting gesture. Looking at the genuine smile in his eyes, I nodded almost without thinking. Sure. Perhaps it was time to give my heart a chance to start anew. My relationship with Owen Natural. Why progressed, starting with that dinner. He was a wonderful partner. He was mature, steady, considerate, and humorous. He remembered my preferences, quietly preparing a hot cup of coffee for me when I was overwhelmed with work. When I encountered difficulties, he would offer valuable advice using his professional expertise. He took me racing, diving, skiing, to try all the experiences I'd never had because Marcus didn't like them. With him, I felt like I had become that carefree girl again, full of curiosity about the world. My long-frozen heart was slowly melted by his warmth. However, an unexpected phone call once again disrupted my life that day. The call was from the prison. "Is this Ms. Grace? We are Northwood. Your ex-husband, Marcus, he's critically ill." I froze, unable to react for a long time. He was only in his 30s and had always been in good health. "It's late-stage liver cancer." The person on the other end explained. By the time it was discovered, the cancer cells had already spread throughout his body. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time left. He wants to see you one last time." I hung up the phone, my feelings incredibly complicated. Owen sensed something was wrong with me, walked over, and gently took my hand. I told him everything. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Go." I looked at him, a little surprised. "Go see him one last time." He looked into my eyes and said earnestly, "I know you still have unresolved issues. Go, speak your mind, and find true closure for yourself. Whatever you decide, I'll support you." Looking at his understanding and gentle gaze, my hesitation and unease gradually dissipated. Yes, I should go see him. Not for him, but for myself. I eventually went to the prison hospital. When I saw Marcus again, I could hardly believe my eyes. The once high-spirited, arrogant man now lay emaciated on the hospital bed, hooked up to various tubes. His hair was mostly white, his face covered in wrinkles and HSPOTS, and he was so thin he was practically skin and bones. Seeing me, a flicker of light appeared in his clouded eyes. He struggled to sit up but didn't even have the strength to lift his hand. "You came." His voice was raspy like an old bellows. I walked to his bedside, pulled up a chair, and sat down. We sat in silence, the only sounds in the ward being the beeping and whirring of the machines. After a long while, he spoke with difficulty. I'm sorry for what I did to you." Tears dripped from his withered eyes. "I regret it, Grace. I truly regret it. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely treat you well, Marcus," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's meaningless to say all this now. Let the past be the past." He looked at me, his eyes filled with despair and unyielding regret. Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, not anymore." I genuinely didn't hate him anymore. When I saw him in his current state, all my grievances, all my hatred, vanished into thin air. "Take care of yourself." I stood up, preparing to leave. "Grace!" He suddenly became agitated and grabbed my hand. "Don't go, please, don't leave, stay with me, just a little longer, please." I didn't pull my hand away, I simply sat back down. "Say what you want to say." He mustered all his strength and pulled out a yellowed photograph from under his pillow. The photo showed us when we were young. Under the cherry blossom trees on campus, I was wearing a white dress, smiling beautifully. He stood behind me, his arm around my shoulder, his eyes full of adoration. We truly were happy once. "This photo, I've always kept with me," he murmured. "I always wondered how we ended up like this. It was me. It was all my fault." Tears dripped onto the photo. "Grace, if there's a next life, I'll definitely never let go of your hand again." His voice grew weaker, his breathing more labored. A piercing alarm blared from the nearby machines. Doctors and nurses rushed in. I was pushed aside. I watched them gather around him, performing last-ditch efforts to save him, watching him, in his final moments, still desperately clutching that photograph. My eyes, in the end, still welled up. Not for him, but for that irreplaceable youth that was gone forever. In the end, Marcus passed away. He passed peacefully. I arranged his funeral. His mother was already partially paralyzed from a stroke and unable to speak. His relatives, after his downfall, had all scattered like birds. The large funeral parlor was desolate, with only me and a few company employees who came to help. I looked at his black and white portrait. He still looked as spirited as ever in the photo. As if the 10 years of imprisonment and the illness were just a dream. I paid my respects. "Marcus, rest in peace. This life, we're even." By the time I returned from the cemetery, it was already dark. Owen's car was waiting at the entrance. Seeing me, he said nothing, just walked over and wrapped his arms around me in a warm embrace. I buried my head in his chest, and all my weariness and sorrow seemed to find an outlet in that moment. "It's all over," he whispered in my ear. "Yes, it's all over." I looked up and smiled at him. "Yes, it's all over." On the way home, soothing music played in the car. I leaned against the window, watching the fleeting nightscape outside. He was focused on driving. The profile of his face, illuminated by the streetlights, looked exceptionally gentle. As if he noticed my gaze, Owen turned and smiled at me. "What is it?" "Nothing." I smiled too. "I just feel like, this is truly wonderful. I had a loving family, an understanding partner, and the career I loved. Everything I had lost had now returned to me in a much better way." "Owen. Let's get married." He slammed on the brakes, pulling the car to the side of the road. He turned, looking at me incredulously, his eyes filled with surprise, excitement, and a hint of tears. What did you say?" I unbuckled my seatbelt, leaned over, and gently pressed a kiss to his lips. I said, "Let's get married. I, Grace, formally invite you, Mr. Owen, to be my husband, the father of my children, and my partner for the rest of my life. Do you accept?" He looked at me for a very long time. Then, he smiled. It was the most brilliant, most moving smile I had ever seen. He pulled me into a tight embrace, his voice hoarse, but incredibly firm. "I do." Outside the car window, the city's neon lights shone like a river of stars. I knew that my true light had just begun. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your perspectives, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.